Awesome. And we do not have minutes. Okay. I call the Westbrook Planning Board meeting on Tuesday, December 1st, 2020, at 7 p.m., held in the Performing Arts Center, Westbrook Middle School, 471 Stroutwater Street, Westbrook, in session. Roll call, please.
Jason Frazier,
Present.
Larry McWilliams,
Here.
Robin Tannenbaum,
Here.
Rebecca Dillon,
Here.
Rainey Daniel,
Here.
Joseph Martin, Nancy Lifter Capes, John Turcott, and Ed Reedman are absent tonight.
Thank you. Having a quorum, we can move forward. The first thing on the agenda tonight is the approval of the minutes from November 3rd, 2020, and I'm looking for a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved by Rebecca. I need a second, please.
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you, Larry. It's been moved and seconded, moved by Rebecca and seconded by Larry. Any comments on the minutes? If there are none, roll call vote, please.
Jason Frazier,
Yes.
Larry McWilliams,
Yes.
Robin Tannenbaum,
Yes.
Rebecca Dillon,
Yes.
Rainey Daniel.
Yes. Let the record show that it passed unanimously. New business. Becca, would you be good enough to read the item into the record?
Item 2019-20, Site Plan Approval Extension Request, 959 Spring Street, A&C Builders, LLC. The applicant is requesting a one-year extension on the December 3rd, 2019 approval for a combination self-serve automatic car wash located at 959 Spring Street, Tax Map 002, Lot 015, Zone Highway Services.
Thank you, Becca. Is there someone to make a presentation? Please come up, state your name, your address, and what role you play in the presentation.
Good evening. My name is Adam Letourneau. I'm the owner of A&C Builders and the respected project in front of you tonight. I am requesting a 12-month extension on the car wash project due to some setbacks from COVID-19 and the lending agency that we were working with. They focused on the PPP plans, and once they focused back onto lending, some of their focus had changed, and they reevaluated some of their lending risk, and it's set us back slightly.
Thank you, Adam. Staff comment?
Staff take no issues with the requested one-year extension. There's been no change in the ordinances that would affect the previous approval of the board. We included plans of the site plan for the board's review and reference that was provided through the process last year. And if the board decides to move forward, we have provided a motion on page 1.
Thank you. Before I open the public comment section, I'm going to remind everybody that if you would like to make a statement or if you have a question, please come down to the microphone system to my left. Make sure you say your name, your address, and at the end of the open public comments, Becca and Jen and I will be gathering notes, as well as Adam, and we will ask the questions at the end. This is not turning into a conversation. So, I open the public comment section. who would like to come down and make a comment? I have a very fast gavel. Seeing no one, I close the public comments. There is no staff or applicant discussion on the questions because there were no questions. Board comments or discussion? I just have one, Adam. Have you begun to do anything on site, like cut trees, move items?
We have moved forward with one thing, and that was removing the power from the structure. We did that based on discussions with the lending agency and with the general contractor, and we did that probably a week before COVID hit, and then everything paused. So the residence is without power at this point.
Okay. And you are the owner of the property?
I am.
Okay. If there are no other questions, the motion regarding this is in our memos that were given to us, and it's on page 1. And I'm looking forward to a motion, please. Larry?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to grant an extension for the 1 year for A&C Builders LLC for a combination self-serve automatic car wash located at 959 Spring Street, tax map 002 lot 015, zone highway services district, and is approved with conditions. All previously approved findings of fact and conclusions and conditions are still applicable.
Thank you, Larry. Motion moved by Larry. I need a second, please.
I second.
Thank you, Jason. Moved by Larry and seconded by Jason. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Jason Frazier,
Yes.
Larry McWilliams.
Yes.
Robin Tannenbaum,
Yes.
Rebecca Dillon,
Yes.
Rainey Daniel.
Yes. For the record show that it was unanimous. Good luck, and let's hope this COVID-19 gets over faster than we think.
I agree. Thank you so much. Have a
Good
good
luck.
evening.
Thank you, Adam. I am looking for a motion to move into workshop, please.
So moved.
Moved by Robin. I need someone who's brave enough to second it, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jason. Moved and seconded to move into workshop. Roll call vote, please.
Jason Frazier,
Yes.
Larry McWilliams.
Yes.
Robin Tannenbaum,
Yes.
Rebecca Dillon,
Yes.
Rainey Daniel.
Yes. We are now in workshop. And in workshop, we're not as formal as we are during the meetings. So, but the questioning works the same way. Okay? So, Becca, would you be good enough to read the items into record?
Item 2020-39, Site Plan Subdivision Conditional Use, 511 Bridge Street, Chase Custom Homes and Finance. The applicant is proposing the demolition of the existing structure and construction of 9-unit subdivision consisting of 3 duplex units and 1 triplex unit. This application would supersede the previously approved 100-child daycare facility initially proposed at the same location. Tax map 048, lot 046, zone residential growth area 2.
Thank you, Becca. Who will be making the presentation from the applicant?
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thanks for having me. My name is Michael Tadamo Wieland. I'm a civil engineer with Pterodon Consultants. I'm here on behalf of Chase Custom Homes and Finance to present actually 2 projects that are pretty close to each other in town here and pretty similar types of projects as well. The first one, as Becca talked about, is 511 Bridge Street. And many of you will remember this project site from last year, from 2019, at which time I was before you On behalf of Chase Custom Homes and Finance again, proposing a 100-child daycare center in the existing structure, and there was also an expansion of that existing structure proposed. That was approved in October due to, that approval was subsequently extended, but due to the current pandemic, the daycare just doesn't make sense from a business perspective for the owner. So we're here before you with a new proposal for that site. The site's about 2 acres in size. I know many of you have been there when we did a site walk last year. It's on the east side of Bridge Street, it's roughly across from the community center, and it's on the corner of Graham Road. Behind you is an aerial photo that sort of gives an overview of the neighborhood. The existing structure, of course, is abandoned. There's nothing in it today. It was Rocky Hill Manor, which was an assisted living facility. And as Becca said, the plan is to completely remove the existing building and all pavement and all improvements to the site that exist today will be removed. And Becca, if you could go to, there we are, there's the current site plan. This is a sort of a colored version of what you received in your packet. And it is 9 units. These will be condominiums. The 9 units will be in 4 buildings, 3 of which will be duplexes, 1 of which will be a 3-unit. The design of, the overall design of the site, it was sort of features this single driveway off Bridge Street, and we've designed it to look sort of like a residential street, even though it will be a driveway. It will be a named driveway for E911 purposes, but it'll still be a driveway. We've designed it with esplanades and sidewalks on both sides, and there'll be street trees in the esplanade, again, to give it that sort of residential neighborhood feel. Parking is, we've sort of tucked parking in between the buildings in order to sort of screen that parking from Bridge Street as well as from Graham Road, and it provides parking close to the individual buildings. Right now we're showing 18 parking spaces, surface parking spaces for the 9 units, so 2 parking spaces per unit, which slightly exceeds ordinance requirements. The other thing this layout does for us is it gives each of these units sort of a semi-private backyard, or, an area to behind each unit where they'll have a deck and a lawn area to enjoy. And then finally at the end of the driveway we're showing a dumpster, solid waste. Of course, this project doesn't qualify for city pickup of solid waste, so there'll be a dumpster towards the end of the driveway, and again that's sort of screened from all sides. From Bridge Street as well as Graham Road and the abutters pretty effectively. That's a general overview. We're here for a sketch plan, so we're looking for feedback from the board. We have held a neighborhood meeting. Generally, the project was, I would say, pretty well received. It's going to be much less impactful than the 100-student daycare was, from a traffic perspective. Also, from a impervious area is lessened, so the drainage, in theory, there'll be less runoff from impervious surfaces, and so we've heard some comments from the neighbors. We're incorporating some of their thoughts, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts and incorporating those as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mike. Staff staff comments?
Staff has provided our initial comments based upon all of the department heads coming together to critique the project. In general, we find the layout to work well with the area. We've provided some feedback related to the building elevations in keeping with a lot of the other projects that the board has been looking at to create variation and color in the variety of structures that are looking to be placed upon the parcel. Obviously, with the final application, we'll have all the details for the department heads to be able to review. But at this time, to provide the applicant feedback on the application, as well as we can provide a virtual site walk if the board wishes.
Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing, and the rules are the same as if we were in regular session. Anyone with a comment or comments or question or questions may come before to the left side, and make sure you let me know your name and your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Maria Lundy, and I live on Graham Road. I have prepared like a observation/statement that I would like to read. On May 28, 2019, a neighborhood meeting was held at the site plan. On June 4th, 2019, the planning board had a workshop as to the original proposal. On June 27th, 2019, the developer stated in his letter to the American Journal that he was already working on staffing and plans on quickly enrolling in the daycare by late fall. On July 13th, 2019, we had a walkthrough with the planning board. On October 1st, 2019, during the public meeting, a site plan and conditional use was on the agenda. I spoke to the problems that would most likely arise from such a plan on the neighborhood. When I spoke of traffic, I was really serious. I was not using this as a ploy. Right now, with parking on the street, we are down to one lane, and that is with no snowbanks, not to mention the noise or drainage issues. On October 31st, 2019, I wrote a letter to the American Journal stating the impact of such a business in this residential area. I'm stating all this to show that we have been through with this developer for almost a year and a half. It has been very stressful. On September 15th, 2020, a request for a year extension was proposed at the planning board meeting. The extension was for the original proposal. The developer gave an excuse of COVID. Well, COVID came in February to March of 2020. How is that an excuse for something that was started in May of last year and was supposed to be up and running in the fall of last year? The planning board accepted this excuse, no questions asked. I am so disappointed in my town's planning board. On November 13th, 2020, I received a letter written on November 9th in the mail for a new proposal at the site. Now, I don't believe for 1 minute the developer didn't know of his plans for a change on that September 15th meeting. I'm not sure, but I am guessing these are the semantics of politics. On November 16th, 2020, I was extremely frustrated getting conflicting stories from the consulting business in the planning department regarding the 1 p.m. Zoom meeting. After 4 phone calls and 5 emails, Michael from Tanadarm Consulting personally called me. We had a nice talk with regards to the new proposal and of the afternoon meeting time, which I felt was not very favorable for people who can't go to an afternoon meeting. With all this said, I am in favor of the new plan for this site. This is in part of the noise level, but more importantly, the congestion of traffic and drainage issues in green space and impact on wildlife. I believe that the new plan fits in more with being a neighborhood. I am in hopes that the developer will see to a buffer of trees as was proposed in the previous plan. Going forward, I hope that the developer listens and understands any neighbor or neighborhood in which he intends to become their neighbor. He certainly didn't listen to what we had to say and certainly didn't work with us neighbors. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Maria. Have you got her address, Linda? Or did I miss that?
17 Graham Road.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment? Anyone else? I close the public hearing. Rebecca and Jen, did you see any question? All I heard was statements.
Correct.
Okay. Board comments or discussion? Seeing none, I have some. Mike, if you could be good enough, and what would your best guesstimate be from the back of the nearest building to the condo association property line?
Yeah, so certainly more than 100 feet, potentially 150 feet would be my estimate. And certainly, and again, I spoke to Ms. Lundy about this on the phone, and we had a good conversation, and I think I do understand her concerns. And certainly this project will maintain a much larger buffer between those condos and really the limit of clearing, or the edge of this development than the previous. So again, yeah, my estimate would be 100 feet plus.
Okay. And I see you have trees on your sketch plan that, to me, connotes newer trees.
So some are new, some are existing. So the ones that are along Bridge Street, those are existing trees that we intend to maintain. The new, and likewise the ones that wrap around on Graham Road. The new trees that are shown are what I'll call street trees, the ones that are along the driveway in the Esplanade. But certainly the overall idea here is to preserve as many of the existing trees as possible. There are quite a few out there, and we'll do what we can to limit that clearing. That said, I've also had discussions with the neighbors just to the north, the Wintons, who are here, and they've got there are some trees along that property line that are on this property that are sort of overhanging their driveway, and some of them are dying, some of them look diseased, and so we'll work with them to limb some of those probably and remove some if they pose any sort of danger or nuisance, and look to come up with an overall planting scheme that again maintains as many existing healthy trees as possible, and then supplementing with new ones where appropriate.
And are these, and I do like the idea that they're condominiums, by the way. That really, really pleased me. Are they one-story or two-story?
These are 2-story, so sort of townhouse style, 2-bedroom.
Okay. And have you chosen the colors yet, or is that going to be at the next step?
Yeah, we've not. So we've heard feedback on the buildings. We provided a very sort of preliminary sketch of building elevations. Kind of this is, in general, it's going to look like a two-story slope roof structure. In the next round, in the full submission, we'll provide much more detail on the building, including colors and any other architectural details that Chase Custom Homes chooses to do.
Okay. And my last question is going to be, the inner circulation, by the way, I like how the driveway goes. I like how you're putting the parking in between the two buildings, hiding them. I like that very much. Is there going to be circulation inside, as in walkways or paths or sidewalk?
So there will be sidewalks along, there'll be sidewalks along both sides of that driveway, again, similar to a residential street. And then sidewalks to the parking areas as well, and then connecting to the front of those units.
Okay. I think, personally speaking, you're on the right path.
Thank you.
And as you said 2 meetings ago, at the last meeting, we were impressed on how people are thinking outside the box now. So
Good.
I would encourage you to think outside of the box. Some people are creating really, really wonderful areas, and that could be a really wonderful area. So I encourage you. Anyone else on the board? Last chance. Yes, Becca. Not Becca. Rebecca.
I just have a few comments. One, I like the site layout as well. It's nicely organized, and I do like the parking between the duplex units rather than in front of the buildings. I would like to see, if you think about driving down Bridge Street, all of the homes there are facing Bridge Street, and where you're turned inward, it would be nice if those two side elevations on Bridge Street were treated differently than, I understand you mentioned that these are just, there are probably other buildings someplace else that you've included for us to see, but I personally would like to see those two end elevations respond to the street more. And I agree fully with the staff comments on the elevations and variation in style, colors, and architectural features. I think that will really help make these buildings look more interesting. They look really kind of sad and plain right now. And I know that there was an email from a neighbor included, and I like his idea of maybe taking some inspiration from the building that's there that will be torn down. It has a nice scale to it, nice proportions, as most older buildings do. So I think using that as an inspiration would be a good idea as well. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? Robin, please.
Thanks. I guess I'll echo what my colleagues have said. Actually, I think the site plan is very successful. It's a tough little thing to do, but I like the narrower street, and I appreciate the sidewalk and the planting strip between the sidewalk, et cetera. I think my main concern has to do with the buildings themselves and the uniformity of the massing and the uniformity of the elevations. This neighbor hit it spot on. These are very colonial, and it's not a colonial neighborhood. The representation, the graphic representation actually looks like something from a house about old books, which is nice in some contexts, but is really not what's around here. It seems a little, it just feels really forced. Specifically, the elevations facing Bridge Street, I think absolutely have to have some sort of differentiation. Those are always primary elevations. I think it's really unfortunate when housing units sort of are like equal opportunity On the side elevations, they don't take into account the different conditions. I realize it makes it slightly less uniform, but among other things, why wouldn't the elevation facing Bridge Street have some nice big windows facing Bridge Street? Maybe even a bay window or something to begin to speak to the language of what was there, maybe even a porch on that side. So I can certainly understand why that wouldn't be as desirable on the other side. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the lower left one. That said, this guy's going to get some really nice morning light if they've got some better windows coming this way. So I would really encourage the design team to look at differentiating those end elevations per where they are. They could all be a little different and be unique. The guy in the middle of the 3-unit, out of luck. I had a couple of my other comments on that. Oh, also, I really appreciated the planners. I agree with everything about color and variety. If there were notes here about materials, I can't read them. They're just too small. I'm sure we'll see that next time. I think the porches are or the covered entry so diminutive. It'd be lovely to see something, whether or not they're combined, that contributed to the feeling of community, as opposed to these very segmented entry points. It doesn't encourage anything. Barely enough room to keep your groceries on your hip. I know if there's anything we've learned with COVID, it's that we need some outdoor space with roofs. So I think some variation of coverings there would be very nice. I'm curious about how things will be handled in terms of demarcating the backyards. Like, does Joe stop mowing here and James starts mowing here? That's for you guys to figure out. I'm sure it's a condo association thing. But again, some differentiation would help make that really clear. And there might even be a nice way to give people different experiences based on where they are and a little more privacy. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Anyone, Jason?
Mr. Chair. Thank you. Just got a question here. Why, have you considered a design where maybe the houses go back a bit with attached garages? It just seems like everything's compressed to the center with a lot of parking lot. And that's my question.
So, Mr. Chair, may I? I'll take a stab at that and let me know if I'm answering your question. So we did try to keep it compact. When looking at this, the sort of the pattern in the neighborhood is a fairly compact style of development. And furthermore, it helps keep some of those existing trees. It provides greater buffers to the neighbors. It reduces runoff volumes. So there are a number of reasons for that. And as far as parking goes, I agree. I'd love to see less parking, but we've got an ordinance to meet, and we've got, unfortunately, everyone's got at least one car, right? So that's what we're dealing with. Did that sort of answer your question? As far as detached garages go,
Or attached.
or attached garages, that's not the owner, who's a home builder, believes that this is the best plan for this site, and so that's what we're working with.
Anyone else? Yes, Larry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just a comment on the structure of the neighborhood as well. The duplexes are looking like duplexes versus looking like a house, so to speak. The driveway going in is very nice. So to look in, it's good, visual coming out of Bridge Street. Other than the side view, like has been mentioned before, most of the houses that are on that street are facing. But the design of the structure is basically looks like a square, and it doesn't have any real concept of what the old neighborhood or what the new building should look like. The duplexes, we're seeing them going up. Everybody's building duplexes, and I know Chase, built custom homes, and getting more towards, they should have a better design, making it look like a home than make it look like a duplex. And I'm all forward to move forward as far as, with the the child care center. It's unfortunate that we do need the child care, and that was an approval of the board, and we were looking forward to having something, especially with the community center right across the street. It was looking like a pretty good option for where that was going to be, and yes, we did approve that. And I understand with the way things in COVID has changed this whole world, flipped our city upside down as well, but as far as building duplexes as they go, let's make it look like a neighborhood / home versus just a building that's being erected to make money. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else? When do you plan on coming to see us again, Mike?
Well, we were here to listen to you folks. We'll turn around a submission as quickly as we can. What is it? 1st of December. So hopefully January. When is the submission date, Jenny or Becca?
The submission date for the January meeting or the January submission for the February meeting?
Well, yeah, I don't. When is the? We'll probably miss or very close to the deadline for the submission date for the January meeting. So.
Yep, that's on Thursday.
Yeah, so we're looking at the February meeting.
So that's, are you getting that?
Yes. So that would be, January 7th is the submission date.
Yep. So we'll be ready for that.
Thank you, Michael, and please pass our good wishes to Mr. Chase.
Great. Thank you all for your feedback. Very helpful.
I'll see you in a little bit. I should have probably asked about a virtual sidewalk, but I believe everybody here saw the last presentation of the sidewalk, so unless there's somebody that really needs a virtual sidewalk, we can skip that. But if you want to see it, by all means, make it known, and we will have it. None? Okay. Okay. Becca, would you be good enough to read the second one?
2020-40 Site Plan Subdivision Conditional Use, 98 East Bridge Street, Chase Custom Homes and Finance. The applicant is proposing a 3-unit subdivision and associated parking area located at 98 East Bridge Street. Tax map 048, lot 074, zone residential growth area 2.
Thank you, Becca. Let me wonder, who's going to make the staff presentation, the applicant's presentation? Mike, are you going to do it?
That would be me.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. So this project, 98 East Bridge Street, is actually right down the street from the site we were just talking about. So this is on the north side of East Bridge Street. It's on the corner of Hemphill Drive. And thank you, Becca. So here's an existing aerial photo, or a recent aerial photo of the site. You can see there's a large structure. Coincidentally, this is also an empty assisted living facility, Dolly Farm. And other sort of features of this site are there's this sort of circular driveway, 2 curb cuts, and this curb cut actually leads to a parking area back here. So not very neat or organized from a traffic or vehicle access perspective. The plan is very similar to the Bridge Street project, to remove the existing building, remove all improvements from the site, and develop a 3-unit condominium and this one does have a detached garage out behind it. One of the things we've done with this one is we've cleaned up the East Bridge Street frontage, so the curb cuts will be removed, and we've moved the access onto Hemphill Drive, which is obviously a much less traveled road. It gets a driveway away from the intersection, so there's a lot of benefits to moving it over there, and we credit staff with that idea. They suggested that very early on in the process, and and we looked at it, and we think it's a great iteration or change we made to our original plan here. The proposed residential units will be in this building, located in a similar location to the existing structure, although it's a smaller size than the existing structure. This will be a similar building, I guess layout-wise. We've heard your comments on architecture and style and context to the neighborhood, so I'm assuming that all those comments are going to be applicable to this too, and I thought they were great comments. So we'll provide more detail with the full site plan submission on that, on the building. But generally, the building will face East Bridge Street, which is sort of the pattern in the neighborhood. The garage is out back, somewhat hidden from East Bridge Street, although there will be some views of it. Much of this site is cleared already, so really there will be little, if any, additional clearing. There's at least one tree, I think it might be this one here, which is a very old, I think oak, perhaps a maple, that looks like it's on its way out. We were out there a couple weeks ago, and a piece of it had fallen, and the whole thing looks hollow. So I'm guessing that one will have to come down. But again, our goal is to preserve as many of the existing trees as possible on the site. There's a series of what I think are willows. I'm not a tree expert by any means, but they look like willows along Hemp Hill Drive. We'll maintain those. We believe those are healthy, and so we'll keep those as they are. And the Bridge Street frontage will be East Bridge Street frontage will be dressed up with some new trees along that frontage there. Kind of again similar to the other plan, we've designed this with sort of backyards in mind. So it provides a little privacy for folks in the back while still having the house address and face East Bridge Street. We will be taking this, as well as the other project, to the Recreation, Rec and Con committee, and so we'll be looking at the outdoor or the landscape and trying to see where we can provide some outdoor areas for the residents to congregate or garden or recreate in some way. So we'll have more detail on that when we're back in front of you in February as well. And I guess finally, this project will also have it'll require a dumpster, its own solid waste removal. As I understand it, because it's condos, it will require that. So we're showing a dumpster beside the garage. Again, it's hidden. It's easy access for a truck, but it's hidden from East Bridge Street. We also held a neighborhood meeting on this one. The neighbor to the north, her name, I forget her name right now, but was obviously particularly interested. Apparently there used to be a fence along this property line that was falling down and was recently removed. So the applicant, Chase Custom Homes and Finance, has agreed to replace that fence, and I think she was quite pleased with that, and I think generally the neighborhood is pleased to see this site brought back to a lively condition. I think that's all I've got on this one. So again, looking for feedback. This is sketch plan, and we'll be preparing a full site plan submission. Hopefully we'll be back in front of you in February. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mike. Staff comments?
I think Mike did a great job in his presentation. We really appreciated the acceptance of comments into this application with removal of the curb cuts on East Bridge Street in order to facilitate the curb cut on Hemp Hill Drive. I think that that makes for a much nicer project, and also is a bonus to the community by reducing our curb cuts. I think we've heard loud and clear about the architecture piece, and so with that, I will hand it off to the board for their comments.
Thank you, Jen. I'm going to open the public comment section. Anyone with a comment?
Good evening, Timothy Fectel, and I live at 4 Hemphill Drive, last house on the right. In the Zoom meeting with Mike and John Chase, I had a concern about the water that flows off that property at 98 East Bridge, and it dumps onto the end of Hemphill Drive, which in the wintertime ices up. So I'd asked him to address that issue. I personally am opposed to the Hemphill Drive entrance to the property. I think it should stay on East Bridge Street. Hemphill Drive is really not a street by code that has been repaved about 2 years ago. So I worry about the base of the street and another heavy truck coming in for the dumpster. I also worry about traffic coming down the street. We do not have a cul-de-sac, a hammerhead, of anything like that. It's usually my driveway that becomes the public turnaround. So that is a concern of mine as well. I don't have any opposition to the project, but I do strongly oppose the street cut from Hemphill Drive. I think it ought to remain on East Bridge. I also wonder about what would become of the address of the property. Would it remain on East Bridge, or do they have Hemphill Drive an address, and we all change our home addresses for that? That's a concern of mine as well. I think that's it.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Someone else? Public comment section closed. Becker and Jen and I saw 3 possible questions. One is the water flow. Mike, can you speak to that, please?
I can. I made a site visit after the neighborhood meeting to look at that situation, and I did it on a rainy day on purpose. And Mr. Fecto is right. He's, no surprise, he lives there and has lived there for some time. The sort of the lawn area adjacent to Hemphill Drive just slopes right on, as well as that existing parking lot. Just runs right off the site onto Hemphill Drive, which doesn't have a great slope to it. It's relatively flat. It's super elevated instead of crowned, so it does sort of flow across the street, and then it looks like it sort of maybe collects near the intersection with East Bridge Street. So certainly what we can do, and it's relatively easy, is to collect that runoff as it comes down towards Hemphill Drive before it gets into the street. There is a storm drain network in Hemphill Drive, and there's an inlet on the back corner of this property. So we will we'll look at that, we'll collect the water and we'll direct it into the storm drain. So it should reduce a lot of that run-on that's entering, that's running right onto Henfield Drive, and hopefully at least reduce the problem that exists today.
Thank you, Mike. The next one, I'm going to throw Jen's way and see where she wants to go with this. Mr. Fecto indicated that, my words, not his, it is a unaccepted street. Is that true?
It is a public street.
It is a public street? And is what Mr. Fecto is saying true about the slope and everything? And
We did not receive any concerned comments from the engineering department that this road could not handle the increase of a 3-unit on its pavement surface.
Okay. Mike, at some point in time, before the next time you come, and in my opinion, sooner than later, can you make a phone call to Public Works and make an appointment with Eric and see what his thoughts are and see if we can come up with a solution? Because the last thing we want is someone who pays as much taxes as all of us do, not have the benefits that we all do.
Sure.
Okay? Street cut on Hemp Hill or East Bridge Street. I'm assuming it's going to be on Hemp Hill because that's where you showed it was.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yes, Mr. Fecto had a concern about the street cut
The street cut, yes.
being on Hemp Hill rather than on
East Bridge.
East Bridge. Can you tell me or explain the logic you used to put it on Hemp Hill?
Sure, so, I'm sure Jenny can elaborate on this, but whenever you have, you're accessing a development of this type, generally you want to access it from a street that is less busy, that has less traffic. You want fewer curb cuts on the busier, higher speed roads, and so getting people off East Bridge Street onto an existing safe intersection, and allowing them to access the property from the much lower volume, lower speed road is generally favorable.
Okay. Those are the only three questions I saw. Did you catch one?
The only other question that was asked was about the address, which we will look at. Do you want to answer that now, Linda, or would you like time to review that?
I would need time to review it. There's a few questions whether or not where the front doors are. Are they going to have gang mailboxes? Where that's going to be located? Obviously, if the mailboxes are on Hemp Hill, it would have to have a Hemp Hill address. There's other things that I would have to look at prior to assigning addresses to that.
Thank you, Linda. Was there any other question?
That was it.
No? Staff comments? Suggestions, questions? Robin?
Okay. So, you're right, I think all those comments do apply. But I find this site plan peculiar, to be honest, and I'm sure it has its reasons. I just find it very odd, and to me, I'm just putting myself in the role of somebody living there. Having the garage, so if I'm going to have it, having it so far away doesn't seem as useful. I'm somebody who doesn't have a garage, so I look at this sort of starry-eyed, and it seems odd. So I have developed an alternate site plan for you, and I guess I'm wondering
Great.
why, which I would give you, if you would consider putting the garages basically opposite the units behind them. And this, of course, and even without that, gets into the great question of what is the front of the building, what is the back of the building, right? Which is, Rebecca and I can attest, what we spent all of our time in architecture school discussing. What's the front, what's the back? And you've got a real conundrum here. And it also seems odd to me that what's the closest to the parking and the garages is through the deck and the living room and not right to the kitchen, which probably has a little mudroom area and for groceries. So I would propose that you look at reorienting the garage opposite this and flipping the orientation and put the kitchens facing the garage on the back and the living rooms on the front, which would then let them have a nice street presence. You could have some individualization of each unit, some trees. It's south-facing. You're going to get some really nice light in there. And it just makes more sense to me. So those are, that's sort of out of the blue, but those are some comments. I also would love to see that in the way it's designed now, there's this walkway that comes from the parking area, you come down, and then you hang a right. I think that should continue out to East Bridge as like a pathway. I think it's important. I understand the address might be Hemp Hill Road and the curb cut, but I feel like a pedestrian connection to East Bridge is important. It just keeps, again, with the neighborhood pattern that typically houses face East Bridge and have access to East Bridge. And I think if you looked at reorienting the garage, I think the whole thing could even be more compact with your additional parking spots. There's some places to hide a dumpster. So those are my thoughts. I'm happy to give you my sketch, and I'm curious what the
love to see
thinking.
it.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm just curious what the thinking was for orienting the parking where it is. I'll leave it there. And I guess the other thing I'll say, just going back to the architecture, is not only do I think there's this opportunity for variation, but it's actually, it's right across the street, but it's a chance to put the custom in Chase Custom Homes by differentiating this unit from the ones across the street. I think it's nice to acknowledge that they're a little different. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Robin.
Someone else? Yes, Larry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the proposal looks pretty good, especially with the speed limits, say, just on one side of it. You had mentioned slower versus slower, but that speed limit on both of those roads is actually the same at 25 miles an hour. So that's pretty much inconsistent on travel. Now, more travel on that road, yes. So access coming in with a 3-unit, but you're acting 6 cars, maybe most, at certain different times, isn't really going to make one difference or the other versus coming in and out. I do like the design of going in off of Hemp Hill, though, with breaking that up. That circle that's been there in the parking lot, it's not really conducive as far as driving through. So that part of the design I really do like. Again, I talked about the structure, how it looks, and the facade, how it should look as far as making it look like a home versus an apartment or a duplex or a condo or more fit to the neighborhood. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Someone else? Jason?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, it's great to see a garage. I think all new condos should have garages, but it's a personal opinion. I agree with Robin that the walkway should go out to East Bridge Street. It's just, I don't know, it just needs to connect that for pedestrians. And also, I got a question. Where's the nearest sidewalk? Does anyone know?
It's across the street.
It's across the street?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, definitely if it connected down that way. And as for the layout of the parking lot, I don't know, it's kind of mixed feelings on it. I like it, it's different, but kind of Robin had some great points there where most of the people will be entering in through a sliding door into what looks like the kitchen or into the living room. Anyway, so it's just kind of a funky, I'm not sure how people aren't going to walk all the way around the building to enter in.
Right.
So it'd just be nice to see some different layout options. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Disney. Rebecca?
I think the rest of the board has come up with some great ideas. They all sound pretty reasonable. I also, when I first looked at it, it was, again, oh, that's nice, they have a garage, but it's really far away. So I think, Robin had a really good point about maybe moving that, and I think it can be done without increasing any pavement and getting it behind the building. And her point is a great point about as people are entering the units, if you treat the front of the home as the front and have those sidewalks go out to Bridge Street, you probably wouldn't need to wrap the sidewalk around the side of the building, because then people would be going out the back regardless. I think that sidewalk going around the side is a little odd for what's a residential type use. So, yeah, they all had some great thoughts, and I think I support all of them. And again, the architecture.
Sure.
Same comments as before.
And my comment is, you were right. Everything was asked for the last one is asked for this one. But I do like the concept of having a garage. And I think Jason has a plan. I think if I would downsize into a condo, I would want a garage just for, although I would probably screen it and have it as a sunroom. But I think all the ideas and comments that are made were very, very good. And my next question is, what is your plan on moving forward?
Same as the previous project, we'll be working to submit this in January to be on the February planning board meeting.
That's good.
May I sort of bring something up for discussion? I heard a lot about bringing a sidewalk out to East Bridge Street. And this is something we talked about with staff a little bit, and even talked about a crosswalk. Because currently there is no sidewalk on this side of East Bridge Street. So taking pedestrians out to East Bridge Street and putting them into East Bridge Street with no sidewalk is not something that I'd want to put on my plan. Again, with staff, we talked about bringing a sidewalk maybe down Hemp Hill and putting a crosswalk in. It was the opinion of the city engineer that probably wasn't advisable either. So that's why we haven't done that. Again, I can work with staff a little more to explore that, but that was the reasoning for not providing a sidewalk out to East Bridge Street. So I don't know if anyone,
Well,
given what I've said, I don't know if there's additional comments or if you feel strongly one way or another.
Robin?
I don't know that I feel strongly, but that's helpful. Honestly, I just didn't see it closely enough. I assumed there was a sidewalk there. So you explaining that there isn't one
Gotcha.
helps me understand why you didn't do it. I guess I don't have a strong, I get it. I wish there was a sidewalk there, especially since it's so close to the community center. So I don't know. I'll defer.
I had the same comments
Yeah.
that the board did in the conversation. I made the suggestion about making the sidewalk connections. And it was other staffers that did provide comment back on the fact that it is connecting basically into a shoulder. The board has the discretion to make suggestions beyond that. This was initially staff's recommendation back to the applicant to not have a sidewalk from the structure down to East Bridge, but the board has their discretion on how to move this forward.
I would concur with, I'm sorry. I would concur, Mike, with what you had said. That to me makes logical sense. I'm usually a proponent for sidewalks. but I knew there was one across the street. I just assumed that the walkway would go and be a sidewalk, that there'd be a crosswalk. But I like that idea much, much better. Did the city engineer give a reason why it would not be good to have a sidewalk on Hemp Hill?
I think that he just was not necessarily pushing to have the sidewalk there, but again, I think that that's a conversation that we can bring back to him.
I think, right, because that makes so much sense, Mike. Robert, Rebecca?
Oh, I was just going to ask a question about the mailboxes. If the applicant had any thoughts on, would they be having them on Bridge Street or East Bridge Street, sorry, or on Hemp Hill Drive? And
Yeah, good question, and we've yet to make contact with the post office on this. I can tell you that the residents of Hemp Hill today, and there are, four houses, their mailboxes are all on East Bridge Street. So they all walk out to the end of East Bridge Street. They expressed some interest in having them moved over to Hemp Hill Drive. It would make a shorter walk for them, easier. So again, that's a discussion that we will have with the post office and see what, they may mandate one or the other. So we'll talk to them about it.
okay, because I guess that led me to this other thought is if the mailboxes are going to be on East Bridge Street, and a sidewalk to East Bridge Street is probably a good thing, and having the mailboxes located there.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's not the case, then I think not having sidewalks makes sense.
Thank you.
And not only would it be easier for the residents, but it'd be a lot safer than going out to East Bridge Street. And I think Councilor Emmett Williams is 100% right when he makes the statement that the roads there are 25. However, anyone who drives or doesn't drive in the city of Westbrook realizes that people think it's 45, 50, 65. So, right. So I think the safer we can make it and the easier we can make it for everyone is the best. I would talk with Jenny about that again and bring it up at that meeting. But that is a really good idea. So hopefully we'll see you in February or January? February?
February. Yep.
Good, very good. And again, give our best to Mr. Chase.
Will do, thank you.
Okay? Thank you very, very much. Becca, can you read the next item into the record?
Item 2020-41, Site Plan Subdivision Conditional Use, Warmel Farm LLC. The applicant is proposing a 118-unit subdivision comprising of 58 duplex units located on the previous Warmel Farm land. The subdivision will have frontage on Bridgeton Road and Brook Street with access from Brook Street. Tax map 016, lot 002, and tax map 019, lot 029. Zone residential growth area 2.
Thank you very much, Becca. The applicant's presentation will be done by whom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Sean Frank. I'm a civil engineer with Sebago Technics in South Portland, here on behalf of Wormel Farm LLC, the applicant. Thank you, Becca. The USGS map behind you folks basically shows what was the original Wormel Farm, which was approximately 112 acres altogether, which had frontage on Route 302, right across from basically Chase Custom Homes, as well as a bit of frontage on Brook Road. You can go to the next one, please. Thank you, Becca. Maybe scale that down just a bit. Perfect, thank you. As you folks may recall, this area right here, it's approximately 14 acres, was an area that I think you folks have looked at recently. Oh, geez, maybe I can get this a little close up. Looked at recently. My client was actually, he had an option on the whole thing originally. We got up into a lot going on with this mobile pipeline going through here and the easement and crossing that with roadways and utilities and that type of thing. And dealing with them became quite problematic. Basically, the owner basically sold this piece off. The remainder of it, Wormel Farm LLC has a purchase and sale on it. As you may recall, there's a pretty good ravine that goes in down through here and a drainage going to the river. So we're looking at basically the 33 plus or minus acres in this area right here. And thank you very much, Becca. The proposal in this is a single access off from Brook Street to come in, and as we're showing it right now, is 59 duplex units for a total of 118 residential units. Obviously, take this sketch a bit with a grain of salt. In fact, that we're pretty much showing rectangles for all the units. And times of just kind of doing the initial layout associated with this. As we get a little further into the presentation, you can see that the applicant has been working on some of the architecturals and how we can kind of make this work. We did have a neighborhood meeting last night via Zoom, which is relatively well attended. Obviously, the biggest issues that were brought up was the traffic on Brook Street, especially associated with the single access here, as well as some buffering between the units and some of the abutting properties. We told them that those are issues that were certainly important to this board as well, that in fact a full traffic study will be done for Brook Street. We did check the site distance, which I think was one of the quick things that the staff thought we should look at. And there is adequate site distance. It exceeds MDOT requirements at the intersection. We don't anticipate needing to go to DOT. We think it'll be local approval, but we do anticipate obviously doing a full-blown traffic study associated with this. It is our understanding that there is a current project proposed with the City of Westbrook and DOT for the intersection of Brook Street and Route 302, and anticipate that we'd be making some type of contribution to that. This is a condominium project, so they will not be public roads. It will be all public roadways and infrastructure associated with this. Our anticipation is it'd still be pretty much like a city road, except perhaps not the granite curbing, but curbs on both sides, a sidewalk on one side, and access throughout. One of the comments was in terms of providing adequate turnarounds at the ends of the little dead ends, if you will, and certainly we will revise the design accordingly associated with that. Again, take this for what it is in fact, this is our first step, is basically pulling together a concept plan to kind of get going here in terms of what we think the site will accommodate for a number of units, and kind of working our way backwards from there. We have the water service would come off from Brook Street, extend throughout. There will be hydrants associated with that. It will be public sewer. The anticipation is again, we'll have public sewer throughout the roadways that all come down somewhere to a central pump station. That pump station will, via force main, go over to Route 302 and connect back into the municipal system within 302. We are comfortable that, in fact, our services had been extended prior to the repaving of 302 and the reconstruction down in that area. And we will be getting some additional information associated with that, but we're quite sure that we have service on the 302 side. That is the only proposed development along the 302 side at this point in time. The applicant is really concentrating on this condominium development on this particular side. Has no specific development plans for the Route 302 side, but certainly does anticipate that either he or somebody else in the future will certainly come forward with a development proposal for that parcel in the relatively near future. Stormwater management obviously will be a big key associated with this. There had been some general layout associated with this when this had been proposed as a number of times over the years. For single family and multiplex and all the kinds of other things. So I think there's a lot of good information associated with that, but we will be having, I'm sure, multiple BMPs throughout the site to capture and to treat the runoff prior to it outletting the property. It will require a DEP permit as part of this review process. Again, we're just getting started in the design, if you will, so in terms of the specific locations associated with those BMPs, I can't let you know right now, but certainly will be part of the design, and certainly will work with DEP and city staff associated with that. Working with staff, they have discussed that one of their key parts would be a sidewalk along Brook Street, and certainly we'll coordinate that with staff as well as we go forward with the design process. Trash pickup, we anticipate basically to have this as a private contract, hopefully with the same contractor that's performing the work for the city, where, you know, each of the units would have, you know, the bins, and the bins would be picked up by the private contractor, except rather than being through the city of Westwick, it would be through the homeowners association. If we can go to the buildings a little bit, Becca, and again, understand the applicant has been working, again, our initial discussion with staff was that they didn't want to have the same building over and over again. They wanted to have some differentiation to it. Although the floor plan is certainly, especially for the two-unit buildings, is anticipated to be pretty much standard throughout in terms of, you know, the two-car garage, the 2 bedrooms on single floor of living. We have been talking and actually have provided some buildings that for some from 3 bedrooms as well, which would actually have 2 bedrooms upstairs. They would have a second floor, although from the facade standpoint, you can see they all pretty much look like, you know, the 1.5 to 2-story buildings. But the idea is basically to utilize different materials, if you will, for the roofs, certainly different colors, different porches, different designs associated with the garage doors and those types of things, so that even though it's pretty much the same floor plan, which is proved very popular in previous developments, but to, you know, so that it doesn't just look like the cookie cutter going all the way down through. And obviously, based upon, you know, the individual unit styles that we're talking about here, obviously that'll be incorporated, if you will, into the overall site plan and condominium plans as we move forward through the design. Again, aside from that, Mr. Chairman, we understand this is our step one, if you will, from a multiple step process. Again, the fact that we're dealing with DEP, we're certainly looking at probably a minimum of a 6-month review and approval process. Our whole point is, again, we appreciated the comments from the neighborhood last night, and obviously we'd just as soon would like to get some comments back from the board that we might incorporate into our design as we move forward. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation, Mr. Chairman, but be happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Staff comment?
I believe Mr. Frank did a great job in his presentation. You can see from our staff comments that this is a substantive project, so there's definitely going to be substantive comments. There are right now some points of clarification on survey that the applicant will need to be providing us before going into the final application. But I believe that all the high points were mentioned during the course of the presentation, so I'll let the board provide their comments.
Thank you, Jen. I open the public comment section. Is there anyone that would you like to make a comment? Ask a question? Please go to the mic.
Hello, my name is Marcia Gartley. I own the land abutting this project on the east side down to Wormel's farm land that travels along the Presumpscot. And I was unable to go to the meeting last night, and I just got in from Florida. But I have a couple of questions. Number one of the big concerns that we have had, we have what we call a lower field down at the end of our property. And one of the concerns we've had when we've had other people come and talk about development is having a right-of-way that will access that lower field. And I know that there's been talk about bringing a road across and up onto Lunt Road, or, to do some different things like that. And this plan does not show, and I can't quite tell where the project is going to end relative to my property. So if you look at the map up there, that strip of land that goes down, my daughter built a house that's down below, so there's a right-of-way. So we do not own the land that's up near Brook Street, but we own the second house. And so we own all of the land from Brook Street all the way down to down there. And you can see where our lower field is. And there's been discussion. And I didn't see any way to continue a road from this. It looked like it was really cut off at the ends of these cul-de-sacs. And I'm thinking maybe there should be room for a road to continue go down and come around, or to join on the development down at the other end. Because, and I'm sure I'm just repeating a lot of things that our Sebago guy just talked about, but I have lived in the property. I actually own the land right across the street, that about 30 acres up there, and have a little farm there. And I don't know if anybody that doesn't live on that street realizes how fast the traffic goes up that street, and that the slope of that hill. And when we back out of our driveway, we have to look at the other side of Wormel's Hill and see if any traffic is coming down, because we can't see any traffic. And I just see a potential for that being a huge problem. And if there was a possibility of ever having a road that goes down through and comes out on 302, so that all of the traffic wouldn't be emptying onto Brook Street. And I'm sure they also realize that when I was born, this place, it was a dirt road. So how busy it has become, but the development over in Falmouth, where I don't know what the name of the bank is. The bank has a home office over there in Hannaford, and it has become, Brook Street has become a very busy road, particularly and when traffic is going to work and coming home. So it's, I think I hate to see that project just cut off, and so that there's the possibility for a road continuing on down, and we certainly would like to have access to our lower field. And so if we decide to develop that's a possibility. And so I would ask that they make a consideration for that. And I think that's it. I mean, the buildings look pretty nice. I'm disappointed that they aren't one family. And I hope that they're all duplex. I don't want to see a whole bunch. I mean, it's a nice neighborhood out there, and Pride's Corner has always considered itself a great family location, and nice homes. There are some beautiful homes in there. So I would hope that that this development continues to make that it improves our street, as opposed to making it look like it's, I'm sorry, Spring Street. So I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Someone else?
Hello, my name's Joe Silva, and I own the property that's on the north side of Brook Street, adjacent to Marsh's property. We have an acre and a half. We also own the property that the pipeline is on. Just a few comments that as you come up the hill, it's a white cape. That street crests high and turns at the same time. And I have a hard time being partway down on the hill, pulling in and out of that property. I can imagine the problems that Marcia's seeing right at the top of that piece. So I was quite surprised to see that they're trying to come out onto Brook Street and not go down, I think it's Carroll Street down there. And the other thing I want you all to, you should get involved with the DEP. I've seen all of that land that they're proposing to put the middle portion of that division be underwater, totally underwater. The bridge at the bottom of the hill, as you come down off Brook Street towards Falmouth, I've seen that completely underwater. So that's got to be addressed. And if you're bringing sewer up there, right to Brook Street, which it appears they are, why isn't that sewer being extended to the houses along Brook Street? So there's a couple of big questions should be addressed. These people have been living there. I live in Scarborough, but I own the property that's there, and my brother is living at that property right now. So there's some big issues that look like they're being just overlooked. One being the flooding, which I have seen. Guarantee you that that whole bottom section has been totally underwater, and I would say 6 to 8 feet underwater. So DEP's got to get involved with that. And if you're bringing the sewer up that far, hook in at there, go up Brook Street to Falmouth, and go back to 302. I mean, if you're going to do it right, make that a nice community. And the other portion that she mentioned was, sorry to be so nervous here, but a lot of people, I make a decision every time I come from Scarborough over the turnpike, whether to get off on 302 and go to Brook Street, or go up to Falmouth and backtrack coming back down 302, because there's a lot less traffic. So it looks to me that some major things are being overlooked, the most dangerous being that hill, incline, and curved at the same time. And they do all go 45 miles an hour. Nobody's going 35. So it's 45 to 50. And it really makes it hard for the people on that side of that north side of Brook Street to get on or get off onto their property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Someone else? Anyone else? I'm closing the public comment section. I saw 3 questions, really. One was storage on Brook Street. Sean, are you bringing in storage?
As I stated, Mr. Chairman, the intent is basically to have a private system within the roadways to service these units, which will go down to a private pump station, and that pump station would then pump via a force main over to Route 302. Certainly this condominium association is not looking to be a sanitary sewer district. I certainly appreciate the folks, what they're talking about in terms of the sewer up there. I don't see extending sewer along Brook Street as a private developer's either responsibility and or, I mean, who's going to take care of it after the fact? To put that onto a condominium association and a private development just doesn't seem practical to us. Again, at this point in time, we're proposing sewer just within the project to a pump station that'll pump over to 302.
Thank you, Sean. Well, one of my questions were going to be later on, we can address it now, is the little dinky bridge.
And again, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any great answers for you at this point in time in terms of, the status of Brook Street and certainly the culvert existing on Brook Street at that location. I'm sure that'll be part of our conversation with city staff. I do know, again, we were certainly talking about putting a sidewalk and how that would work down through there and, and what needs to occur at that particular location. But like I said, the one thing we did do was to check the sight distance at the intersection. We do appreciate that, cars are going faster than perhaps than the speed limit is out there. But again, we had more than adequate sight distance from the intersection as it sits today. And obviously, where we'll be tying into the road, we'll actually be bringing that intersection up a little bit. So we're comfortable that we have adequate sight distance at the proposed intersection with Brook Street.
Thank you, Sean. Flooding, were you aware of the flooding?
And I guess we're assuming at the culvert crossing Brook Street. I mean, there are wetlands obviously on the site that have been identified and are shown on the plan. I will say that topography can hurt you and help you to a certain degree. I mean, certainly as you compare where the building envelopes are that we're proposing versus the topography associated where the drainage is that's crossing Brook Street and it's working its way down to the river, there's a major difference, if you will, from an elevation standpoint. Obviously, the point will be to minimize any impacts on the wetlands, and we certainly will have an overall stormwater management and drainage plan associated with part of this as we go through the design process.
And as so far as extending the roads?
And I have to, that was the first time I'd heard of that, to be honest with you. So I can't answer, obviously, for the applicant and the owner, but I will certainly be more than happy to bring that up to him and certainly look at that possibility. But that is nothing that I've investigated to this point, but certainly we'll be happy to bring that up to the owner.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Board comments, please? Oh, I'm sorry. Becca and Jen, have I forgotten anything? No? Thank you. Board comments? Yes, Larry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because of the scale of this project, with Brook Street, the way the traffic is, and I know that hill and that turn very well, and it is tricky with the speed limits that are going up. My question is, why do we, again, with all the duplexes we have, I know we're RG2 to do so, but bringing a scale of this in, I'm a big fan of this scale of project to having single-family homes in, opposed to the duplexes. The style that I'm seeing in the pictures, yes, you have different styles of roof lines, but they all basically look like barracks. They're all the same height. They're all the same square type of buildings. I know it's the preliminary stages. But again, just like I made comments before, we're looking, or we would like to see, or I would like to see, more of a personalized home look versus a industrial style duplex where everything looks completely the same. So the traffic study is going to be a very important factor in my decision on this project, and the fact of the matter of with the sewer, the drainage, going into Minnow Brook. I know we did approve the 9 duplexes going in, or 18 units, because of definitely the demolition of the barn and the former house that's there. It's an eyesore as it's been for years. But I'm looking at a project of this size as well. We don't want it to be an eyesore either in our community, where we should make it look more like a family development of houses versus a series of rectangle square boxes that are going to go in and just plop them in. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else? Yes, Rebecca.
I agree with everything Larry just said about the appearance of the duplexes. They are definitely, you've provided us with several different options, but they still kind of look the same. I don't know, it's weird. And I think part of it is because every single one of them have the garages protruding beyond the face of the porch and the entrance, where in a traditional nice home where everything is scaled properly, you see the front door first. You don't drive up to your, it's welcome to my home, not welcome to my garage. And here I feel like, whoa, these garages are just way way too large for, the roof lines of the garages are too large, their presence is too much. And because they're all like that, it makes them essentially still look all the same, even though they've played around with the roof lines slightly. So that's probably my biggest concern, because it will feel and look exactly the same driving down the street. It's a nice layout, the street system, and so I think from a site planning perspective, it works really nicely, but it's not going to mean anything because the buildings are going to ruin it, because they do all look the same. And I did find it interesting, I know you can't look in a crystal ball, but we have had larger subdivisions like this before, the one behind 33 Elmwood, where they did plan in the current subdivision for a future connection to another subdivision, potential to be there. So I think that was a really good point, and from a long-term planning perspective, if it could just be thought about where that could potentially be, might be a good thing to incorporate. And I think that's all that I had.
Thank you, Rebecca. Robin?
Okay. Sorry, it's not just beat up on building night, but I would have to concur with what my colleagues here have said about the buildings. And I think Rebecca put her finger on it. They're going to appear the same because they all have the garages out front, and because they're all one story. So I get there's a lot of topography on the site, but with no differentiation of massing, it's going to be very long and low. I actually think there's some nice elements to these elevations in sort of a cottage style. I think there's some very nice components that could be taken and used vertically and just different massing. I'm very uncomfortable with all garages facing front. You have to go quite a ways back to get to the front door, and it really doesn't promote any sense of neighborhood or community when the front door is recessed. It's recessed and recessed and recessed, and all the spaces where people hang out are on the back. So there's really, I think it's going to hurt any sense of street presence or community to only have a bedroom facing the front. So I know these are big things, and your client probably has had success with these before, and there's no doubt people buy them, but I think we're starting to see that we've seen examples of more interesting layouts and more interesting building massings, and that's what we'd like to expect here. I'm also a little concerned, I get that this is a conceptual plan. There's definitely a disconnect in looking at it between the massing of these units and the proportions on the plan. Like, I think, this is a diagram. These are definitely wider and less deep than what you're showing here.
Correct, yes, absolutely. And again, I think we kind of started with...
Yeah, it's a diagram.
Exactly, so like I said, take that a little bit with a grain of salt,
I get it.
obviously. That the whole point was really to just kind of, again, concept, if you will, at this point from the site plan standpoint.
But I think one of the things, seeing them actually sort of generically like this reveals is we have so many different topographic conditions here. Again, that to me speaks to why would we place the same building, even some with dormers, some without. Some of these are going across massive topo, some not at all. The floor plans imply a basement.
Yes, it is anticipated that it'll be full foundations.
Some will be able to be walkout, some will
Yes.
not. I think there are opportunities to differentiate. It just feels like the same experience everywhere. The other thing I wanted to mention is, might there be an opportunity for some special, I don't necessarily mean common, like a clubhouse or a playground, but are there any sort of points along here that aren't just like house green bump, house green points, so, some features that could be played up, or interesting trees or ledge that could be kept and exposed, a little bit of a there, something where people would say, oh yeah, it's down by, the thing over there. I'm thinking of that same neighborhood, Rebecca, past Elmwood, and the one that was already there when we did the site walk was very nice, and it responded to lots of natural features. It immediately felt settled. So I'd love to see something. I feel like when we're at this scale, if we're at 20 or 30 units, it's one thing, but at 118 units, there needs to be something besides just the buildings plunked along. And it's certainly a really interesting site, so there should be some of those opportunities. Some visual interest. I think that's it. I appreciate the comments from the neighbors. I think it'll be, whatever the reviews from other entities are, and obviously you're at the very beginning of a long process, and
we are.
those things will reveal themselves. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Jason?
I'm going to be the odd duck here, but I actually like it. I think it's a great design, and I've been including I even like the building designs. I've been in similar developments like this with condos, and it just looks great. It's very uniform. I mean, for a regular neighborhood with single family or whatnot, maybe not, but in a condominium kind of neighborhood, I think it works quite well. One thing I've noticed in this one I went to is the two units were offset. One was set back a little bit, the other one was set more forward, and it gave it a little kind of a depth and kind of separated them a bit. And I thought that was a nice feature on those. So, and anyway, that's my comments.
Okay, thank you, Jason. I was waiting for you to be finished writing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have 8 comments, which is not too bad.
It's nice to have a brief night with you.
I know, isn't it? And I'm not going to put them in any particular order, but just things that came across my mind, okay? And I think with more information from you and your second round will help us see if you're going the same way as our minds are going. We haven't addressed green space yet. And I know that you will have a park and recreations and conservation meeting at some point in time, especially with 118 units, so that will be taken care of. Unlike Spring Street, that has a bad taste in people's mouth, I personally like it for what it is. I was saddened that they didn't do more, because those particular type of housing was needed. And fully realizing that our assumption on school children is not necessarily true in all phases. So just because you're going to have 118 residents does not mean you're going to have 118 students all in the 6th grade at the exact same time. So, but we still have to be prepared for where is the school bus going to stop to pick them up. And if it's going to be treated like a city street, you know, we haven't discussed that 100%, if it's going to be an accepted city street yet. No one's said yes or no to it.
No, Mr. Chairman, it's anticipated it's going to be owned by the association.
Right. So therefore, you're going to have some point where children and their parents will want to wait in the occasional rainstorm and snowstorms that we have in Maine. Sidewalks. Now, I have them under 2. Okay. The external sidewalks, in my opinion, would be Brook Street to 302. Some of it's going to be built now, and I would assume that you're going to be responsible for some of the external one from where their property ends to where your property ends on Brook Street, which has and the second one is the sidewalks within. I know you mentioned on one side, 118 units, in my opinion, spread out over the amount of land that you have. I would prefer sidewalks on both sides. Children are gonna want to run. Adults will want to walk. You need space. And the older I get, the more I prefer walking at a very slow pace, leisurely down the sides of the roads, which has nothing to do with me being nosy and looking through the front window and front door of the homes. A big concern I have is that bridge. I think Mr. Silver had a very, very good comment about that bridge. I remember it when it was in 97 and again in 98, the last century. There was water over that bridge. And that's going to be a big one is, what are you going to construct there? How are you going to construct it? And also have a sidewalk. On a project of this size, I definitely would like to see it be a neighborhood. I'm very, very proud that we have 3 outstanding architects on the board, and I'm thankful for their input constantly because they challenge our other architects that comes before us, and they always produce something a lot better than what they would have. I think in the last 3 meetings, I don't think you were here making a presentation, but one phrase that I heard, which would please you because you do this, and the architects on the board step forward, as well as the non-architects step forward, and said, think outside the box. And where are the people going to, since it's not an accepted street, where are they going to pick up their mail? And the other one is park recreation and conservation, which is what we talked about earlier. And I concur with everything that was said, even with what Jason said. I think it's important we have these developments in creating new neighborhoods. Why not in Westbrook? Westbrook has always had a good school system. Westbrook's a good place to live. I've lived here 73 years and I don't regret one day. I want other people to experience the exact same thing. So, in saying that, anyone else has a comment? Have we forgotten anything, Jen? No? Okay. And same thing with a virtual site walk. We might want to do that when Sean comes back and makes his next presentation, because I've been dealing with Frank for a long, long time. He always pulls a rabbit out of a hat and makes us more interested. So if you are not accustomed to that property, because we've been talking about it. I've been on the board for 20 years. Marsha, you owned it probably 20 years. Before I was born, we've talked about it often. So we might want a virtual site walk at some point prior to us saying yes or no. Okay? Do you have any comments for me, Sean?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, this is what we were looking for, was this feedback. I appreciate it. I will say, I've been called a lot of things, but architect certainly hasn't been one of them. I'm just a poor civil engineer, but, certainly what I will do is certainly bring that information back to my client. And I think this is all taped anyway, right? So
that is correct.
It'll be something he'll actually be able to listen to as well. So I appreciate the comments. Again, understand from our standpoint, this is from us, step one, if you will, within obviously a multi-step process. So again, we appreciate the feedback, and we'll look forward to coming back in front of the board with some more detail.
Okay, and my last question, before I ask Jen to say something, is when are you planning on coming back?
That's a good question. They're going to be all over me, so he's pushing. He's actually had this under contract for quite a while, and just so you know, I mean, they certainly were looking at single-family homes and those types of things. I think the pipeline, to be honest with you, not being able to cross that pipeline really threw a wrench into the whole system in terms of the design associated with this. And as it gets back to public roadways, in terms of lengths of dead ends and how that all works out in the city of Westbrook, it really has put some limitations to us in terms of, some of the layouts that we've been looking at here. So, but he's anxious to keep going, so what I will probably propose is that, rather than just trying to come in and here's a final, let's get it all wrapped up in one meeting, is as we get more detail, Mr. Chairman, maybe get something back to you folks, the first of the year, and have some multiple meetings, if you will, prior to the actual final. Again, we need to go to DEP anyway, so I think what I'll probably concentrate on is the DEP submission, kind of looking at that. That's going to be more the technical thing, if you will, and then with that, come back and see the board and start adjusting it from there.
That's a good concept. Jen?
Sean actually answered a piece of my question, but just so that you are aware, all of our meetings are on our website, available so that people can see them at any time on the Westbrook Community TV page.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Sean, as always.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
I would like to have a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved, Mr. Chair?
Moved by Jason. I need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Larry. Any discussion? I don't see any. Roll call vote, please.
Jason Frazier,
Yes.
Larry McWilliams.
Yes.
Robin Tannenbaum,
Yes.
Rebecca Dillon,
Yes.
Rainey Daniel.
Yes. And before we officially adjourn, since we unanimously vote on that, I would like to see the planning board up here with Rebecca and Jennifer for 30 seconds, no more. And someone can time it. This meeting is over. Thank you.